Frater Achad. The Magical World of Charles Stansfeld Jones. C.S. Jones, also known as Frater Achad, was a key figure in the early development within the OTO in North America, and was a significant author, who contributed considerable achievements to the study of the lemma. Aleister Crowley gave him the singular distinction of being his magical son. Realizing this when Jones presented him with the key to interpreting the Book of the Law. The first OTO lodge in North America was founded through his determination. Jones rose to extremely high levels in the OTO, and a biographic account of Jones is presented here, which provides a look at the magical quest upon which Jones ceaselessly strove to evolve, and the many achievements which he has contributed along the way. Charles Stansfeld Jones was born in London, England, in 1886. In his youth he developed an interest in the occult and sought a magical order which would satisfy his highly inquisitive nature into all things beyond the physical realm. He studied Eastern philosophy, and the Yoga of Ramakaraka. After reading Crowley's Magic, Book 4, Part 1, and the Equinox, he sought out an association with the AA. Fortune arose as he was presented with an opportunity to join the AA in 1909 as a probationer, which he accepted and took the motto, Unus in omnibus, VIOOIV, or in other words one in all. His instructor was the infamous J.F.C. Fuller. It is during this period that he briefly met Aleister Crowley. He loathed the Christian mores and mindset that had been pervasive in England. It was due to a scandal regarding his paternity that his parents were viewed as morally objectionable. When he was 21, in January 1907, he moved to Saskatchewan and worked on a farm for 9 months. After that he moved to Vancouver, British Columbia, and in 1912 he was able to secure a job with British Columbia Electric Railway Limited. It was upon becoming a neophyte in February 1913 that he took the motto which was to become his most familiar moniker, Frater Achad. In 1914 he wrote to Crowley about the possibility of establishing the OTO in British Columbia. Wilfred T. Smith signed with Jones October 24, 1914 to join the MMM. Crowley gave Jones a patent up to the 7th degree and all degrees up to and including the Sovereign Grand Inspector General. This made him a member of the Supreme Council of the OTO, and was the equivalent to a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Mason. Jones immediately began gathering members after being given this authorization. In 1915 the Vancouver OTO Lodge was thriving. Jones staged the rites of Isis, in order to attract a greater degree of public attention and interest into the mysteries. Crowley planned to visit the lodge later that year, and advised Jones to initiate as many members through to the 2nd degree as he was able. To remain incognito, Crowley was announced as the very illustrious Brother Clifford's 7th degree, and he visited the lodge with Sir Hilarion, Jane Foster. Crowley praised Jones for his great achievement setting up the lodge so successfully. A very insightful commentary to Liber OF Sub Figura CCCLXX was written by Crowley and Jones in 1915, and is included in the Weiser edition of Commentaries on the Holy Books and Other Papers. Crowley bestowed upon Jones a great deal of materials concerning the 9th degree. It remained up to Jones to discover the secret of this grade, in order for him to attain to the sanctuary of the Gnosis, 9th degree. In 1916 Jones stepped aside as master of the lodge, in order to focus more fully on writing and lecturing upon magic. Crowley's diary entries detailing his magical working with Jones, entitled The Hermit of Esebus Island, no longer exists. In order to continue with his 9th degree theories he began keeping a diary focused upon his sex magic workings. Jones had rescued his wife Ruby from a life of prostitution when they were wed, and although he had been faithful to her up to this point, he sought out magical partners to work the 9th degree rituals with. While analyzing a 7th degree paper, which he had received upon his initiation, he had a startling revelation, and after writing to Crowley with his findings, Jones was presented with a patent for the 9th degree. Jones took the magical name Parzival upon entering the sanctuary of the Gnosis, 9th degree. Also at this time, the oath of a Magister Templi, and swore to the task of the crossing of the abyss. To attempt this before one is mentally and spiritually mature enough, is to open the gateways which hazard a possible ruin to one's health and sanity. Jones desired that Smith's stepdaughter Kath would be his partner with his 9th degree workings. Jones' diary for June 20, 1916 reveals, proclamation of NT. He declared that he was going to give all of his possessions to the OTO. Although Crowley warmly welcomed him when hearing the news of his oath, Jones quickly realized the full burden and immense strain which accompanied his swearing of the oath. He began receiving revelations, and started viewing life from a radically different perspective. He believed the Hebraic system of the Aeon of Osiris, and the Tree of Life were smashed up, and that the new magical current was running in full force. Through continued correspondence, it dawned upon Crowley that Jones was indeed the magical son which had been foretold in the Book of the Law. Jones had become the babe of the abyss precisely 9 months after Crowley had been conducting a sex magic working with Sor Hilarion to bring forth a magical son. After reading Crowley's article on the Ouija board, written for the International, he began experimenting with its method, and proved to be quite efficacious at communicating with the spirit world. He felt that concerning his swearing of the oath, there was no longer an abyss to cross. That the AA, including the grade of Mega, should be eliminated, and that he himself was now an 11th degree Absissimus in the OTO. At this point, as far as Jones was concerned, the OTO was the primary focus of his attention. He regarded the ordeals he was undergoing to be of monumental significance, and believed himself to be altering the established order through a force of his will. Crowley unofficially made Jones the head of the OTO strictly for political purposes, so that George Cowie, who had been the Grand Treasurer up to that point, was able to be replaced. Crowley had accused Cowie of defrauding the OTO of dues, but this was an unfounded allegation. Jones wandered into a hotel in Victoria and engaged in a sexual encounter with a woman who he crossed paths with, and later that evening, due to increasingly erratic behavior, he was arrested, although was soon released after he explained that he was under great stress, working as an employee for the BCER. Crowley declared that Jones had succeeded in crossing the abyss, and that he was ready to assume Crowley's previous position that he had vacated upon declaring himself a magus. Jones immediately packed his belongings and traveled to New York to meet up with Crowley on March 25, 1918. Jones met with Crowley and his new Scarlet Woman Sor Kaitharati Minor, and while communicating with the wizard Amalantra, Jones was given the magical name Arctine. Jones was quickly able to find employment in New York, and in July he replaced Cowie in the position of Grand Secretary General in the OTO. Crowley completed the book Liber Aleph in March 1918. This book is a deeply contemplative set of magical instruction, which was addressed to his magical son. However, due to financial difficulties it remained unpublished during the lifetime of Crowley and Jones, and wasn't released until 1962, when it was published by a Brazilian adept, Marcelo Mata. Crowley explained to Jones that he preferred to have a few wealthy members sustain the OTO financially, rather than a large, unwieldy membership. Surprisingly, Soon thereafter, Jones wrote Crowley a formal letter of resignation from the OTO on August 27, 1918, disagreeing with the way in which Crowley heavily relied upon the OTO dues to finance his lifestyle, and disagreed with Crowley on the direction he was leading the OTO. In October 1918, Jones and Crowley met with Albert Ryerson, the general manager of Universal Bookstores Incorporated, in Detroit. Ryerson also wanted to sell Crowley's stock of publications, which were being stored in London. The plan was to also publish a new edition of the Equinox, due to be published in spring 1919. Jones moved to Detroit and acquired a job working at Universal Bookstores, and supervised the publication of what came to be known as the Blue Equinox. He also began lecturing on metaphysical topics to Freemasons, and to those in the Theosophical Society, using the moniker Frater Achad. The Equinox Volume 3 No. 1 was published March 21, 1919. It contained Jones' magical diary entitled A Master of the Temple, and also another short piece was written by Jones called Stepping Out of the Old Aeon into the New. More controversially, it contained Liber 15, Ecclesiastical Catholici Canon Missae, the Gnostic Mass. Jones joined a Detroit Freemasonic Lodge March 13, 1920 as an entered apprentice. While living in Detroit, Crowley chose the Universal Bookstores to publish the Blue Equinox, but the publication sales were slow. This eliminated the possibility for the publication of the Equinox Volume 3 No. 2. Crowley intended to publish Equinox 3-2 in September 1919. It had been intended to include Lapidus Lazuli, the Gospel according to St. Bernard Shaw, the Amalaja working in a second installment of Jones' magical diary as Master of the Temple. 1,000 copies of this issue had been printed, but as Crowley was unable to pay the $1,500 required for binding costs, the unbound copies were subsequently destroyed by the printers. In September 1920, 6 large boxes of books arrived, which had been sent by Crowley and were received by Jones, who had to pay a hefty duty tax in order to accept them. These were then stored in Detroit at the Leonard Warehouse, and Jones began selling them through the Universal Bookstore. Upon moving to Chicago, he lost track of a portion of the Crowley books, which had remained unsold. Crowley never forgave him for this transgression. The books were later discovered in 1958. Jones left Detroit with W. T. Smith and arrived in Chicago in March 1921. Panic in Detroit. Blue Equinox Journal by Richard Kaczynski covers extensively the correspondence between Jones and Crowley between 1919 and 1921. As the Universal Bookstores were about to close, Jones gathered the remaining crates of Crowley's books and moved them into storage at Detroit's Leonard warehouses. C.F. Russell joined Jones in Detroit in May 1919 to assist in lodge work. He then left to join Crowley at the Abbey of the Lemma in November 1920. Norman Mudd joined Jones in Detroit January 1921, attempting to meet up with Crowley. Jones admitted him as a probationer into the A.A. Smith, and Jones left Detroit for Chicago in March 1921. He was drawn there to be closer to Max Schneider's wife Letta, who he had been greatly infatuated with. He set up a P.O. box and began selling Crowley's books, with the intention of publishing and selling his own material as well. Jones had been corresponding with Theodore Roos, the high-level Mason and a founder of the OTO, for some time, and in June 1921 Roos gave him a charter to serve as an authority in Mizraim, Memphis and Scottish rites. Jones' title was Parzival 10th degree. It was Roos's desire that the OTO hold on to its Masonic roots and not be swept away by Crowley's Thelemic philosophy. This proved not to be the case. Crowley declared himself OHO in November 1921. At the end of 1921, Jones became involved with a group known as the Universal Brotherhood, although on some levels it was known as the Integral Fellowship, and also the Mahakaka Society. The head of this group was referred to as the Mahaguru. The occult author Paul Foster Case was once a member of the UB. He compared it to a modern-day version of Weishaupt's Illuminati. The origins of this order were quite murky, but it is certain that it predated Jones' involvement, and that he was not the originator of it. Israel Regardie was also a member of the UB at around the same period, serving under Jones, as was the OTO member Max Schneider. C.F. Russell also had a brief involvement with the UB after returning from the Abbey of Dilemma. Russell incorporated many concepts from the UB and also the AA, and began his own magical group known as the Corazon Club in March 1922. He also drew inspiration from an unpublished document by Crowley called the Book of the Great Auk. The Corazon Club still operates to this day under the auspices of Michael Bertayet, as a part of his vowed Gnostic initiatory body. In a blaze of inspiration, Jones spent 2 weeks writing his first book, QBL, or The Bride's Reception. It was published in October 1922. It is a Kabbalistic treatise. A key revelation appears in the appendix, which reverses the order of the paths on the Tree of Life. He states that this restores the order so that paths 11 through 32 ascend from Malkuth to Kether. Certain attributes as a result change, which create many interesting new correspondences. It appeared as a limited, numbered edition of 250 copies. In September 1922, inspired by the psychological writings of the time, Jones created a group called the Psychomagian Society or PMS. It was an attempt to combine the fields of psychology, psychoanalysis and autosuggestion with that of magic. His wife Ruby and W.T. Smith both became involved. The PMS and the group drew a great deal of attention from the general public for a short period of time. Jones devoted himself full-time to occultism, giving up his job as a bookkeeper, and gave both public and private lectures, which he was making a modicum of money at. This incensed Crowley, who had vowed to never accept money for magical instruction, and always took a loss when he published and sold his books. Crowley was also critical of the copy of Jones' QBL that he had received, and felt that Jones was prematurely releasing the book without thoroughly developing the theories and central thesis of the book. He was disappointed with Jones' theories, which involved turning the Tree of Life upside down. However, QBL was met with approval by most readers, and the Yogi Publication Society agreed to publish both The Chalice of Ecstasy and Crystal Vision through Crystal Gazing in 1923. That year he also published The Egyptian Revival, and 31 Hymns to the Star Goddess. This book met with Crowley's unanimous approval. In 1923 Jones refused to give OTO initiates the word of the vernal equinox he had received from Crowley. Jones believed that since his initiation in 1916 he was able to become an ipsissimus in the AA, outranking Crowley, who was a magus. Roos died October 28, 1923 and named no one as a successor as OHO. Heinrich Trenker, a high-ranking member of the German branch of the OTO, contacted Jones, who relayed this to Crowley. It was decided unanimously by the three that Crowley should become the next OHO. He in turn reaffirmed Jones as the Grand Master 10th degree for the United States, and that Heinrich Trenker was the Grand Master 10th degree for Germany. The next publication for Jones was published in the autumn equinox 1925, and was called The Anatomy of the Body of God. It had a thoroughly thelemic focus, and expressed the concept that the tree of life is an anatomy of Ra-Harkut, the crowned and conquering child referred to in the Book of the Law. That year, Jones focused most of his energies on the UB, lecturing, and writing. Little attention was focused on his responsibilities with the AA and the OTO. He attempted to distance himself from Crowley's influence. By July 1925 he received a letter from Crowley. This he received through the hands of Max Schneider, which castigated him for wasting his time with the UB, and accepting monetary donations for his occult teaching. In August 1925 he responded to Crowley that he was no longer in sympathy with Crowley's approach to magic, and that he wished to disassociate himself with Crowley's magical orders. After splitting with Crowley in 1925, he focused on an extensive series of lectures which ran throughout many cities in the Eastern Coast. He also wrote to the Leonard Warehouse in Chicago that had been storing Crowley's books, in an attempt to return them to Crowley, only to find that one of the two crates stored there was missing. He even personally visited the warehouse in 1926, but was unable to locate them. In 1928 Jones took communion in a Roman Catholic church, and was baptized and confirmed into the church. In his mind he was infiltrating the church from within, as an attempt to make further connections for the lemma, and to transform the orders from within. Parsifal was Jones' magical motto as an Adeptus Minor in the AA. Jones had a revelation in 1926 that the word of the Aeon of Horus is Alala, which adds up to 93. L equals 31, LA equals 31 and the final LA equals 31. Jones had made the ascent from neophyte to master of the temple in a single step in order to enable Crowley to ascend to the grade of Magus. Jones felt that Crowley never uttered the word of the Aeon of Horus as a Magus. As a result Jones felt that he had spent many years in the abyss due to the limbo created by Crowley not fulfilling his role as a Magus. In addition there was a parting of the ways between Jones and his oldest student and friend who had stood at his side from the beginning, Wilfred T. Smith, who proceeded to become the master of Agape Lodge. It wasn't until 1936 that Crowley communicated again with Jones, writing to announce the publication of the Equinox of the Gods, and recognizing Jones' place in the AA. In this book he recognized Jones as the imprimatur of the AA as its Quetzalarius. In a letter to Crowley, Jones reasserted his position as Grand Master 10th degree, and stated that Crowley had received no correspondence from Jones providing his permission to operate the OTO in California. Crowley responded by accusing Jones of holding on to the other box of rare Crowleyana in order to sell them at exorbitant prices once he had died. Shortly after this, in November 28, 1936, he formally wrote to Jones expelling him from the OTO and replacing his 10th degree position with W. T. Smith. Following the death of Aleister Crowley in December 1947, Carl Germer worried that Jones would potentially create trouble for the OTO, since he was 10th degree ad vitam for North America. On April 8, 1948, Jones announced that the Aeon of Ma had begun. The Mayan Aeon was revealed to Jones in 1922 as being ruled by Rumacus, as mentioned in the Book of the Law. He penned an open letter from Frater Achad, in which he stated that the Aeon of Horus had ended prematurely and that the Aeon of Ma had begun. During an initiatory period Jones realized the importance of the mechanism of reversal, and contemplated how Hebrew was written in reverse of the English language. He applied this concept to his magical theory. He perceived this as a return to the source and interpreted a hidden meaning by rearranging that which had become manifest through the Kabbalah. Jones' conceptualization of the magical theory of reversal shares many similarities to the writings of Austin Osman Spare. It is possible that the Aeon of Ma, symbolizing truth and justice, may run concurrently with the Aeon of Horus on another alternative level of reality. Ma symbolically represents the Aeon of the daughter. The final He in the Yod-He-Vav-He formula of the Tetragrammaton. Ma is representative of the last aspect of a fourfold unveiling. Father, Mother, Son, Daughter. This is in contrast to the Trinity of Isis, Osiris, Horus, which set the template in the Book of the Law. Outside the Circles of Time, by Kenneth Grant, references the concept that the Aeon of Ma operates outside of the normal time-space continuum. It represents a wordless Aeon. It is possible for the Aeon of Horus and Ma to run concurrently because they are the Aeon of the twins, which represents the concept of Zayn. The egg referenced in the Amalantra working by Crowley, refers to the manifestation of the Aeon of the daughter. Maion. Ma refers to Mot, and Ion is a part of the secret word revealed in the Book of the Law. Secretion or secret Ion. This is a key concept to interpreting the Book of the Law. The Maion is also the Aeon of perfection or perfect Ion. Kenneth Grant equates the Babylon working of Parsons and Hubbard as a great release of energy that derived from the Martian current in 1946. The date that Jones received his revelation, April 8, 1948, is exactly 44 years to the day after Crowley received the Book of the Law. Jones mistakenly perceived that the Aeon of Horus came to an end April 8, 1948, rather than the simultaneous concurrence of Aeons. Horus, spirit, and Mot, matter. He thought that the word manifestation from the Book of the Law was the key of the rituals. A collection of papers known as official and unofficial correspondence concerning the incoming of the Aeon of Ma, in the Gerald York collection of the Warburg Institute in London, hold a wealth of informative material on the Aeon of Ma. Charles Stansfeld Jones died on February 24, 1950 and is buried in the North Vancouver Cemetery. An interview was conducted by the Lemma Coast to Coast with Jones' son Tony Stansfeld Jones in May 2005, which is quite interesting in revealing the practical side of his father's nature. Many references to the theories of Jones run throughout the Typhonian trilogies of Kenneth Grant, who has expanded upon his concepts with great insight. Charles Stansfeld Jones was a prominent member of the AANOTO, and his contributions to the field of the Lemma and expanding the study of applied magic are significant. He devoted a lifetime toward fulfilling his magical oaths. He was Crowley's magical son and a magical heir whose writings remain a high watermark in the study of the Lemma.